Welcome back to the Middle of Culture. I am one of your co-hosts, Peter.
And I'm your other co-host, Eden. What a great way to start the pod.
I don't know. I mean, I think if you'd have gone with a ho-coast, that would have been fun too.
Your other ho-coast. That's
your
me.
other ho-coast. I mean,
here's
maybe
the
we
thing.
should just
I'm not a
bring
ho
that
on the
into the
coast.
lexicon.
I am unfortunately in the Midwest. I am not a ho on the coast. I am a ho in the cornfields.
That is true. You are in the Midwest. But, well, Eden, how the heck have you been?
You know, I've been doing okay. It's been unseasonably hot here, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah.
But, you know, we're surviving. Today is the nicest it has been in a very long time, like a week and a half. And it is 81 degrees and feels like 82, which is the nicest it's been in forever. Yesterday it was like 95, feels like 100.
Oh, yuck.
Yeah, nasty stuff. Nasty life.
Yeah, it has not been that bad here. I mean, today was in the mid to high 90s, but of course, as dry as it is, it feels, you know, right now it says 90, but feels like 87. So, you know, we're on the feels like better side of it.
You can sit in shade and it does a thing.
Correct.
I do not have that opportunity.
Oh, I do. I remember that. You know, I lived in North Carolina and there were like 2 months in New England where it would be that way.
Here's the funniest thing that you don't find out about till you live in the Midwest, though. Have we talked about corn sweats?
Yes, we have, and it sounds awful.
Yeah, the corn sweats, they come for you.
Yeah, that sounds terrible.
For you. Anyway, corn sweats isn't here yet, though. This corn is still growing. Corn sweats will be like late August, early, mid to late August is usually corn sweat season. So
it just sounds gross. It's a
gross name. It's a terrible name for it.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Really, it just. Yeah, gonna have to avoid the Midwest.
They weren't cooking with that name.
What have you been up to lately? Anything fun that you've been checking out that you want to mention?
You know, been pretty chilled. Finished Wildflowers.
Okay.
Well, that's not true. I didn't finish Wildflowers. So I don't want to spoil it for anyone who is interested in farming sim type games and is like, oh, I'm up for one of those with a twist, because it does have a bit of a twist to it. But one of the twists is that you control when the season changes. Rather than like, you know, in Stardew or any of those other Stardew alikes, those Harvest Moon alikes, you know, the season is usually 28 days. And so you need to plan your crops accordingly. You need to plan all their stuff accordingly, because in 28 days, fall becomes winter, whether you want it to or not. This game is like, well, you are part of this coven of witches who helps the island maintain its, you know, environment, and therefore you guys have to do a ritual to turn the seasons. And so as I was playing, I would get, you know, the quest to turn the season, and then I'd be like, okay, let's go. And turned the season as fast as I could, because I thought that, like a normal farming game, that was a part of it.
Sure.
What I came to realize is I finished, like, you finish the big main story after a year, and then there's a bunch of, like, post-main story after you've seen the credits. There's a whole lot of, like, okay, well, you did the big main story, but, like, you can still build all your relationships with all these members of the community, and you'll still have, like, events to attend, and you can still, like, improve your farm and go in the mines and all that kind of stuff. So I was like, oh, I'm cruising along. I had not started dating anyone in year one, because I was, like, trying to focus on lots of different stuff and doing lots of different things, and
you're getting the economy up and running. And
it turns out, if you move too fast and you don't get your affection levels up with people, they'll just start pairing off with themselves.
Oh,
and then you'll be like,
miss your chance.
Oh no, I wanted to date you, but now you're dating the hot non-binary butcher. And so that was a blow to my enjoyment of the game, when I was like, oh, the doctor who I wanted to date is now dating this other one of the potential bachelors. And that's when I realized, oh, I needed to take more time. I needed to do this slower, take more time, build up my money, build up my resources, build up my relationships with people, so then I have more choices in my dating pool. So I was going to start the game over again, but then I got like 3 days into it, and then I was like, I don't really want to do this all over again. Maybe later. And so then I took a break, and honestly, we're really just in like a holding pattern until this coming Friday when Dawn Trail, the newest expansion to Final Fantasy XIV, comes out, which is really a make or break situation, because if I don't like it, I think I'm going to unsubscribe from that game for the first time since
oh my
I started
goodness
playing.
I mean, that's like a big deal.
Endwalker, especially the patch quests, we've talked about it, were just such a wet fart to me. And I feel like it was overall the weakest expansion the game has ever had. So I'm really hoping they are able to do some course correction here and that I have a better time in Dawn Trail. Otherwise, I might take, because again, they put out a patch every 4 months or so.
Sure.
So subscribe for a month, play the patch, see the stuff, play for a month, unsubscribe for 3 months. Lots of people do it. I don't have a house I need to babysit in that game anymore, because you have to go in your house every 45 days or it gets auto-demolished. I got rid of my house voluntarily because I didn't want to deal with it anymore. So, like, I could just unsubscribe. We'll see. Did I still buy the collector's edition so I get the special mounts and minions? Yes, I did. But we'll see if I stick with it or if I take a break. But it's really just holding pattern o'clock. So after I had finished Wildflowers, I was like, I'm still kind of jonesing for a farming game before this new Final Fantasy thing comes out. So I started a game that I don't even remember when or how I got it, but is a farm sim called Immortal Life. Which is a Chinese farm sim that is like a wuxia farm sim. So like it's set in like, medieval China era, and like you go to join this like priestly sect, and then this like tragedy happens where all of the members of the sect die. So all of the acolytes who had come to join this sect that was actively searching for new people are now like, well, I guess we need to rebuild this from the nothing. And you have explicitly come because you have the gift of cultivation. You are the cultivator. You're the one who's going to be in charge of the farm, while these other guys are doing blacksmithing and rebuilding the economy and all this sorts of stuff. I'm liking it so far. You can tell that it is a passion project made by a small team.
Yeah.
It is pretty janky. Proudly says in big letters, "Made in Unity," and you're like, okay, so it's one of those, and it is one of those. Sure. But I'm having a good time. It's a good way to spend some time before Friday, and then I took time off work to play Final Fantasy XIV. I hope it's good. I hope that I'm not like a midway through the day on Friday and be like, you know what? I think I'm good. I think I'm going to go back to work on Monday instead of taking more time off. We'll see how it goes. And that's really about the only thing. That's about the only thing worth mentioning. Been reading a lot, but like, man, it's the same stuff I'm always reading. Complicated romance comics. So, same old for me. What about you? What you been up to?
Not a lot. I did officially 2 Sundays ago finally finish my second book. So I finished writing the first draft of my second book, and then decided that I need to do a little, before I go back and revise it. Part of the reason this second book took me so long to finish is because I would take breaks in between where I wasn't writing regularly. And,
sure.
You do that and it takes a little while to get back in. And so to try and keep those writing, neurons firing and stuff, I've just been doing some just short little writing for fun, 500,000 words for the last few nights. And so I've been trying to do that more regularly. But there's not I'm trying to think if I've watched anything. I don't think I have. I have been putting in more time in Cyberpunk. And as I think we kind of talked about earlier, Cyberpunk is an incredible game, but it is a little difficult for me to get into at times because it's a fairly heavy game.
It's bleak.
It's bleak, and there are a lot of quests. And just setting aside, ignoring the main quest, many of the kind of little side quests and stuff, they're they're very, again, there's not a right answer. There's not a good ending. There's not a, it's bad things happen no matter what you do. Yeah. And sometimes you got to make really kind of shitty decisions too, because that's the nature of the world, which I think makes it feel more real, more authentic, and strengthens the game because there is no goody two shoes route you can take. I mean, look, I enjoy BioWare games. I think they're a lot of fun, but the way they are often so black or white, it honestly, it weakens in many ways some of the stories they're trying to tell because you can be such a goody two shoes. And I like the fact that you cannot do this in Cyberpunk. That's just not the world that this game is set in, and they're very true to that. But because of that,
absolutely not.
I have to be in the right frame of mind to play it. And so I find that I won't play it for a while because, I get home from work and it's been a stressful day and I've been dealing with a lot of crap. And it's kind of like, I can't deal with more morally difficult choices. And I am approaching, I think, nearing the end of the Phantom Liberty expansion pack. And look, I can tell you right now, I don't know what I'm going to choose yet. And I can start to see hints of where this may go. And I'm going, boy, this is kind of rough, like what decision am I going to make?
It's real rough.
So, I'm looking at that and I actually fired it up yesterday to play something. And I was like, I sat there at the little dialogue screen with Reed and I looked at it and I went, nah, I'm not ready for this. So I had to close it.
That's fair.
But yeah, other than that, it's honestly just been a lot of work, doing a little writing. And that's kind of really about it. So,
nice. Yeah, I have to agree that that is a thing that game does really well. And I think that while it does sometimes make RPGs harder to play, better RPGs do that. That is one of the things that Obsidian does really well. That's what makes, Fallout New Vegas everyone's favorite Fallout game. That's why I really like the Pillars of Eternity games and why I'm very excited about Avowed later this year. I will definitely, fire up that Xbox Game Pass subscription once Avowed comes out and give that a turn, because I think that, again, they give you these worlds where, everything feels like it sucks. And it's not like I can be a Paragon. There's no Paragon and Renegade. There is shitty choice and shitty choice. And you just have to figure out which is the choice that is the most ameliorative, how can I minimize the damage to the world around me most effectively? And I just think that's good. That's good writing.
It is. And the other thing that it makes it really interesting is, there's been choices that I have made where I'm like, I don't like this choice, but I'm kind of like, but I think that in this world, this is the choice that my V would make.
Yeah.
And so it does actually kind of get you to actually role play more. You kind of have to go, okay, based on the choices I've made in the game thus far and the attitude of my character, how would I approach this? And I think that makes it really interesting. And I give him, as we've said before, I give him huge props for pulling it off so well, especially, after all the, again, rocky start, but they committed to it. And I think that they really have, they deserve any accolades offered their way because they have turned it into something that's pretty incredible. But because of the nature that I do find myself sometimes, I'm like, nah, I just emotionally, mentally, I can't get into it.
I have to ask you, this is not spoilers, but I'm curious. Do you have a favorite fixer? Do you have a fixer who you're like, okay, this person is the least terrible of all these fixers I work with on the reg?
Not really. No, I don't know who I'd say my favorite one is. It's been a lot of have hands lately because I've been doing mostly the Phantom Liberty stuff. So, he's the one that I'm most familiar with right now.
Sure.
But
I have to say, I think my favorite, just because of his hair, is El Capitan. I love his fucking mullet. It's so ugly.
It is really terrible.
Also, his steal this car from Dogtown mission sucks so bad.
Yeah,
they're the worst. Those are the worst thing in the whole game, and those are better now than they were at first release. they're the worst. I did like 2 of those, and I was like, hey, El Capitan, I'm not bringing you another fucking car, dog.
Yeah, I did the first one that kind of kicks off all of those, and then I did one more, and I was like, nah, I'm good. Not doing this.
They really suck.
They really do suck. But I will also say, as I was leaving the party in the big tower, whatever it is, the black sapphire, blue sapphire, whatever it's called, and all of just I swear, as I'm walking out, all of the bar guest guys who are just like getting up in your face, like all I could think is I'm like, I really hope I get a chance to kill every fucking one of you.
You know what?
Because I'm like, you guys suck.
I pulled out my gun and I gunned all those dudes down the first time through, and then I started like the thing of like quest failed popped up, and I was like, okay, well, I'll reload it. But I did gun down all those suckers, and like it was a hard fight, but I took them all down because they sucked. And you are exactly right; they're the worst.
They are. Only other thing I do want to mention before we jump into our exciting and incredible topic for the week is there is a new album that came out in the last, not this Friday, it came out last Friday, and that is the new album from New Zealand trio Ulcerate. I was not familiar with Ulcerate until their previous album, Stare Into Death and Be Still, came out a few years ago. And got a glowing review on one of the metal blogs that I frequently follow to find new music to listen to. Decided to give it a listen, fell in love with the band, and went back and bought all of their previous albums as well. And then was very excited then when their new album, Cutting the Throat of God, came out last Friday. And it is incredible. I don't know if it's their best album. I don't know if it's my favorite of theirs. But then again, Ulcerate is one of those bands where there's truly not a single bad album. They're all just very, very good. At the same time, I recognize Ulcerate is not for everyone. In fact, I would say Ulcerate is probably not for most people. It is very kind of avant-garde, dissonant death metal. You've got a really... the songs don't flow in kind of a normal way. I think there are definitely some nods to things like Gorguts, and especially like their album Colored Sands, things like that, though a little bit less kind of technical. And again, it's a lot more about building this. They do an incredible job of using that dissonance in the music to really build the tension of the music. And it's also one of these things where, look, I know people may think that I'm just spouting bullcrap when I say what I'm about to say. That's okay. They're wrong. There is a lot of trash metal lyrically that is vacuous, that is just stupid. And there is also an incredible amount of very thoughtful, philosophical, very deep kind of lyrically metal music, and Ulcerate really falls into that. I mean, it's their lyrics. The whole album is very much kind of an exploration of what does it mean to be alive? What does it mean to be human? To suffer the way humanity does, and I think that I dig that. I like it when I can sit there and I can read the lyrics and go, okay, you're digging for something kind of deep here, and I appreciate that. And so it is another real monumental album from Ulcerate. That again, and I think there's a lot of people who would not be down with this music, and that's okay. But for me, it ticks a lot of right boxes, and it is definitely going to be, I think, one of the top albums of the year. It's just that good and that strong. So did want to mention that one.
Cool. So,
dear listeners, let me tell you a brief story.
I have one more thing. I have one more thing I need to throw out there.
Okay.
So we signed up for a CSA again this year. I don't know if y'all are CSA folks.
There are not great ones out here, so unfortunately, no.
That's too bad. We were talking with some friends the other day, and we were like, oh, we're signing up for our CSA again. And they were like, oh, which ones are you doing? And I was like, I can't remember the name of it. It's the lesbians out in Solon. And they were like, our CSA people are also lesbians, but they're not in Solon. And I was like, wait, there's more than one lesbian couple doing a CSA? Peter, there are 4 lesbian couples in my area with CSAs.
Good for them. That's amazing.
the gals are out here in force making farms for the people. But so we signed up for our CSA again this year. They were great last year. We're really happy with them. But I decided to once again, we get garlic scapes. That was a thing I didn't know existed till last year. Garlic scape? I don't know what a scape is.
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
It is the thing that grows out of garlic as it's growing. It is like, because, you know, garlic's like a little bulb and it's hard and it's got that like stalk sticking out of the middle of it.
Yeah.
You cut that stalk off while it's growing, and that's a garlic scape.
Okay. And what do you do with it?
It has a garlicky taste to it, so you can use it in a lot of things where you would want to have a garlic taste, but you basically can use it as a green. That's what we did last year. We, chop it up, put it in eggs or whatever. It's really good. But this year, I decided to make a pesto with it. And it's delicious, but B, boy, is it sticking with me. I made this pesto hours ago, and I still got garlic breath. It's the pits.
One of those.
It's really good. Garlic. I put garlic scape, walnuts, olive oil. I don't have any Parmesan, so I threw some nutritional yeast in there to give it a cheesy flavor because I forgot to buy Parmesan.
Sure.
And then it wasn't quite green enough, so I threw a handful of cilantro in there to just kind of green it up. Delicious. It's great. I have this big old tub of freshly made pesto in my fridge, and boy, is it sticking with me.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
I would just like to recommend everyone make your own pesto because A, it's fun, B, it's delicious, C, you can get it real strong. You can get it real strong.
It's true. You can.
Anyway, now back to your tale.
All right. So it was my turn, obviously, this go around to come up with a topic. And after we recorded last time, I mentioned to Eden, don't have an idea right now, but I'll think and I'll get back to you. And the week was going on and I was really just kind of struggling coming up with ideas between that and work and things just being busy and, family stuff and things going on at home. I finally was, I think it's maybe last Saturday or so, I said to my son, Gareth, who, if we do end up watching things, he often participates with me. And I said to him, I don't know what to do. I'm running out of ideas. We need some time in case it's something that we need to do. It requires a little bit of time. And then I said to him, maybe it's time. And he looked at me and he said, is it time? And I said, I think it's time. And that means, folks, that it was time for us to watch Madam Web. And so we did. So we watched Madam Web, and we're here to discuss Madam Web today. And I would like to start with some of your thoughts, Eden, before I share mine.
Here's the thing. I went and saw it back when it came out back in like January, February. I talked about it, not at length, but talked about it in the,
You did. You did.
The A part of the podcast, the what have we been up to? And at that point I was like, I don't get what people are saying. I don't think I understand why people are like, this movie's so terrible, this movie's so dog shit. It's perfectly fine. It's fun. It's like got some shitty special effects and it's set in 2003 and feels like a movie that should have come out in 2003. And so when you said we should do it, I thought to myself, am I still going to and part of the joke, too, is that I have become jokingly, semi-ironically, Madam Web-pilled. And so whenever people would talk about Madam Web online, like on Twitter or in any of the Discords I'm in, I would be like, her web connects us all. And like, lot overuse of the web emoji because I was like, haha, ironically, I'm into Madam Web. I'm like, this movie's actually good and everyone's wrong about it. And so then when you were like, we're going to watch it for the podcast, I was like, oh, fuck. What if I rewatch this movie and I'm like, no, man, that movie kind of sucks. But I chose to have faith. So I bought the 4K Blu-ray UHD and I popped that baby in my Xbox this morning, and I watched it, and guess what, folks? I'm still connected to her web.
That's incredible.
Dakota Johnson is my new favorite fucking actress. She's so good / terrible in this movie. I had a delightful time. It was so funny though, because I was like, hey Cass, I'm going to watch Madam Web for the podcast. You want to watch it with me? And she looked at me and she was like, I'm going to go take a nap. Because she had gone to see it with me the first time.
So she has seen it. She has experienced.
She declined a rewatch, and so I got to enjoy it, just me and the dogs this morning, and it was a delight.
Excellent.
I am still weirdly
Madam Web
into
pilled.
this movie. I'm still weirdly into this pretty terrible movie.
Good for you.
How did you find it, Peter?
So I hate this movie, and I hate every single fucking thing about this movie. I hate this movie so much. The only reason I was not as angry at the end of watching this movie as I was at the end of watching Black Adam with my boys months ago was because I went into this movie with zero expectations, and they were not quite met. Whereas I went into Black Adam with the expectation that even if it's a bad movie, at least The Rock is charismatic and enjoyable to watch, which he was not in that movie. And so I was even more angry at the end of Black Adam. But this is worse than Black Adam.
No,
this movie is so much worse than Black Adam.
No, it's not.
No, it is. It's so much.
I reject this. I reject this so much.
No, it is. This movie is the worst thing I have watched in at least the last few years. It is so bad. I'm so excited to talk about it.
I love that. I'm so sorry. And I'm glad that you chose to inflict this upon yourself. I would feel so guilty right now if I had chosen this and you were like, this is the worst movie I've seen in years. No. Instead, I get to be like, you chose this.
I did. And I fully admit that.
Listeners, yesterday, I'm sitting at the comic shop. I'm working. My phone vips. I pull it out of my pocket. I see there's a message from Peter. I click on it, and it is just a GIF of Dwight Schrute screaming. And I was like, I have a sneaking suspicion he's in the middle of a Madam Web watch. And so, we traded some gifts back and forth. But the last one I sent him as he finished up the movie was the GIF from runner-up for best action movie from our thing last, or maybe in the semifinals.
He was in the Last
Indiana
Crusade.
Jones and the Last Crusade, of the old Templar saying he chose poorly.
Tis
and
true.
that, my friend, is you. I think you chose.
I made this choice.
I think you chose wisely. For me, I'm Indiana here. I'm drinking out of this. I'm putting it on my dad's bullet wound. He's thriving. We're thriving over here.
I will say this. I don't regret having watched this because I knew we were going to podcast about it. But I will also say, had I chosen to watch this without getting at least some type of content out of it, I would be furious at myself for the choices that I had made. Oh my goodness. All right, let's talk about this thing. I'm going to give us a pretty short plot synopsis because honestly,
it's not a whole lot
there's not
there.
that much. It's a pretty thin plot. But we start in 1973 in the jungles of Peru. We've got Constance Webb. She's very pregnant. She's looking for a spider. She's got some diptard with her, Ezekiel Sims. Who knows where Ezekiel Sims is from? Because not only is his accent completely nonspecific, it's completely fluid throughout the course of the movie and is constantly changing. And he has no idea what accent he is trying to use either. But that's all aside. They're trying to find a spider that has healing powers. Now, one might ask, why is a 9-month pregnant lady humping around the jungles of Peru looking for a spider? We'll get back to that, folks. Needless to say, she eventually finds the spider. She gets killed by Ezekiel Sims and all the people with her, or at least he shoots her. And then Las Arañas, these Spider-Men from the jungles of Peru, comes zipping through the trees in what is, quite honestly, one of the most awful action things I've seen in a long time. But
it's so
that's
bad.
aside. They come dropping down, they grab her, they carry her, they place her in a pool of water. They place the big spider on her, the spider bites her, and then she gives birth. Unfortunately, she dies, but her daughter is born. We fast forward to 2003, which, as you mentioned, had this movie, I'm going to say this, had this movie come out next to Daredevil in 2003, I might have looked at it a little more kindly, but alas,
There's
folks,
the thing.
it did not.
That's the thing. It feels like a movie from 2003. The special effects look about as shitty as like a Daredevil or a Catwoman. It feels like in that level of writing. And maybe I'm just a return with a V sicko for that era of... It feels like it's Blade Trinity, baby, which is the worst of the Blade movies, but is still... I would rather watch Blade Trinity than almost any of the Phase 4 Marvel movies.
It very much no, and that's the thing is that it does. I don't know. We're getting distracted. Did you have anything else you wanted to say before? Okay, so we're now in 2003. We've got Cassie Webb. She's a paramedic. She works along her coworker Ben Parker, and in a dangerous call, they rescue the person, but she falls into the water in a car and then has a vision. This experience, and she's floating, and there's lights, and there's webs, and then the next thing you know, she's like hearing these things, and then boom, she's up, she's out, she's being revived, and she's like hearing things that she heard in the water, and all of a sudden now she can see into the future. There is there's a barbecue scene that they go to, like barbecue/baby shower, that is one of the most awkward things I've seen, and I think unintentionally so. There are parts of it that are intentionally awkward, but I think it was just terrible. And then we get to another scene. There is a building that is going to explode because it's full of fireworks. Folks, let me tell you, fireworks in 2003, they hit a little different than fireworks in 2024. These fireworks, they got some power. We'll talk about that later as well, because everything has to be a callback, or it has to be a reference to something, because that's what we're at. When you said like a 2003 movie, we're going to shoehorn in every little thing and hopefully go, kind of turn to the audience and go like, haha, you get that? Did you see that? Did you see that? Anyway, in the midst of this, O'Neill, who is one of their other coworkers, she tells him not to get in the ambulance. He gets in the ambulance, gets T-boned by a garbage truck, kills him. And now she's realizing she can see these things. She can see the future. We move over to Ezekiel, who's, sauntering into the opera of some sort, meets some lady. They have a little one-night stand fling. He says some really awkward, horribly written dialogue things to her, and then all of a sudden starts talking to her about how he has these visions of these 3 teenage girls who are going to kill him. They're destined to kill him. And so from this lady, who happens to be like an NSA agent, he steals her password and then he poisons her, because that's one of the things he can do. So now in 2003, we have access to all of these cameras everywhere. Now, look, folks, I'm sorry. This is like, they set it up in a world where you look at it and you go, yeah, if this was today, yeah, this would totally be plausible. I'm not quite so sure that in 2003 they could do all the things they do with this, but that's okay. Never mind. No. He starts looking. He's got a helper lady, and again, he walks around barefoot in a suit. Can't decide on his accent. She's looking for these girls, and all of a sudden she realizes, ooh, they're all going towards the subway. And so he goes there, and Cassie gets on that subway, and then she starts having visions of each one of these girls as they get on. They're being killed by this guy, and so she's looking around, and all of a sudden she sees him coming, and she gets them all and convinces him to get off, and then people think that she's kidnapping them, and then all of a sudden he goes from wearing a suit and being barefoot to now he's in some weird Spider-Man suit, and he's walking on the ceiling, and then he kills a bunch of cops because he wastes time fighting the cops instead of going after the girls, which gives them plenty of time conveniently to escape and get out of the subway. They get out, they steal a cab, they drive off into the woods. They're there. They're all hungry beans, kind of snot-nosed little teenagers, whatever. And so she goes back to kind of goes to her apartment. She finds her mom's notes. She figures out who Ezekiel is, sees a picture of him, understands the nature of his powers. The girls are in the woods. They go off to a diner. They're in there partying to like Toxic and some other perhaps 2003 appropriate songs. The music, again, felt very out of place to me. All of a sudden, we get this whole scene. And here's the thing, folks. All of the action scenes in this movie don't really happen. They're all visions. They're not really happening. And so we get these scenes, but then it turns out that that's not what's happening. It's just, Cassie Webb is having these visions. And so she comes back. She doesn't find them. She goes, drives the thing in, hits Ezekiel with the car. The girls get in. They run off. They go to a hotel. And then Eventually she, again, there's other weird scenes where she's abandoning them and then she's not, and she wakes up and she gets Ben and they go to Ben's house. Cassie then flies to Peru to track down the tribal chief who saved her mother. He puts her through an amazing ritual that separates her soul from the body and puts her soul into the water. And then she has all these visions and she realizes that she can experience a higher plane of consciousness and everything is connected and every possible future she can see. She, in the midst of all this, finds out that now she's had a real grudge against her mom this whole time, and she's really saucy about her mom. And as a 30-year-old woman tends to make a whole lot of really, just puerile and juvenile comments about the fact that she was an orphan, because she clearly hasn't grown up and hasn't gotten over this. No. But I digress. No. She realizes that her mom went to the Amazon because they found out in 1973, and I need to know if this is something they could actually do, because I'm not so sure. If in 1973, with a paracentesis, or an amniocentesis rather, they could actually diagnose Guillain-Barré disease. I don't know if in 1973 that was something they could do. But regardless, they tell Constance Webb that her daughter is going to have Guillain-Barré disease, which is a neurologic kind of wasting disease. And so her mom's like, heck no, I'm going to go to the Amazon and find a magical spider that will cure my daughter from her Guillain-Barré disease. And so then all of a sudden, all is forgiven. Cassie and Constance, they have this spiritual, this higher plane of existence, reunification, and all is forgiven and everything's better. And then Cassie comes out and she goes back to New York. And then all of a sudden, Ben's pregnant sister, in the meantime, has gone into labor, and they're heading to the hospital. And Madam Webb, Cassie has these visions that Ezekiel's going to kill him on the way, and so she drives, and I still don't know how she managed to get the ambulance behind the billboard so that she could drive through the billboard off of some building and take out Ezekiel, but that's okay. We don't have to have logic.
It was the parking ramp. The parking ramp had that billboard on the front of it.
Yeah. That was, I inferred that because there's not a lot of complexity to the story, but I don't think that was communicated well. Regardless. She comes through, she hits Ezekiel with the ambulance, then they all get in and they're driving to go and, I don't even remember. That's right, sorry, I just saw this yesterday, but boy, it's already leaving my brain. So Cassie and the girls get in the ambulance, and then they leave Ben to take Mary to go have the baby, because basically she's like, if it's just us, Ezekiel's only going to come after us, he doesn't care about you. Come after them. He does. He jumps on the ambulance, and in a show of what is quite possibly the most powerful defibrillator device known to man.
Yeah.
As he lands on the top of the ambulance, one of the girls manages to put the two defibrillator paddles on the roof, on the inside, and activate them, which shocks him and jolts him and goes flying off. Incredible defibrillator powers. We don't have those anymore in 2024. That was a 2003 thing. We decided that those were too powerful. They couldn't be trusted to people. So we've taken off those kind of powerful defibrillators. Needless to say, she's, again, and all of this is everything that they're doing is because Cassie is having these visions and she's seeing the future and she's figuring out how to manipulate it. So they go back to, again, callback, important thing here. We're going back to the place where the fire was. That even though the fire's put out, the building's still just been sitting there. Now, understand, folks, it's been at least a week or two has gone by because she went to Peru and had her whole adventures there. And so inside of this building that was on fire, it still is apparently totally still full of unlit fireworks. And so they go running in and they're putting flares in the boxes of fireworks. So then as Ezekiel comes in, these fireworks are exploding. And let me tell you, folks, again, things were just different in 2003. We got defibrillators that can blow guys off of ambulances from the inside. We've got fireworks that look like bottle rockets that can blow holes in brick walls. And so it does. Firework blows a hole in the brick wall. They go through the brick wall. They get up to the roof. As they're on the roof, fireworks are exploding through the roof. It is sending literal pieces of shrapnel, metal, into things, like piercing things, because of these fireworks are doing that. Cassie manages to grab a piece of metal and she's using this. She's predicting the future and expertly like using it to block fireworks that are coming at the group. And then she's seeing this vision and she's called the police and a helicopter's there and Ezekiel comes up and then he blows up the helicopter and they can't get in. She manages to see exactly where he's going to be and how to get there. And at one point, all three of the girls are hanging and she's trapped and then she separates herself. She somehow mystically separates herself to the point that a see-through, soulless version of her goes to each one of the girls and then physically helps them get back up because apparently these projections of her are also tangible. And then she manages to get Ezekiel. He gets knocked down. He gets smashed by the S from the Pepsi-Cola sign. His vision that he was having, it was never the girls who were defeating him. It was Cassandra Webb who was defeating him. And then she, of course, falls into the water. And then because, again, we've got to make everything tie in. As she's falling into the water, a bottle rocket zips down in the water, hits her eyes. The girls get her. They pull her out. Her eyes are all milky and white. She is now blinded by the firework. And for reasons that then, as we jump to the next scene, are completely unexplained and inexplicable to anyone who knows anything about human physiology, Cassandra Webb now is blind, wearing the ugliest pair of sunglasses known to man, with one exception, and that will be the pair of glasses that she has on in her special suit, Vision, at the end of the movie. And she is now paralyzed from the waist down. So she's sitting in her apartment that just happens to have a web-like window in a motorized wheelchair as the three girls.
How could she afford that apartment?
She's a paramedic in New York, man. Didn't you know they make bank? She probably got a lawsuit. No, she probably got a lawsuit. She probably won a lot in a workers' comp suit. That's what we're going to go with. We're going to say that she was able to somehow twist this into a workers' comp situation. So she's just living off the man. And then the three girls come in and they all make jokes about how she's blind, but she's doing crazy things like saying, bless you, before people sneeze because she can see the future. And then we've got another little vision of the three girls and Cassandra Webb all in their, apparently what I'm guessing is supposed to be like comic accurate type costumes. And then the movie is over.
God, I love this fucking movie. It's so bad.
It is so bad. And I am so glad for you that in the categorization system of the Flophouse podcast, it sounds like to me you would say that this is a good bad movie, meaning that it is a bad movie, but it is an enjoyable bad movie. Am I correct in saying that you would call it a good bad movie?
It is so bad, it's so good. It is a good one. It is a wonderfully bad movie. I love it.
Perfect. I am so glad to hear it. I think this is a terrible movie. And again, I hate everything about it. So let's talk. What are some of the things that you like that redeem this movie for you?
Okay. The things I like about this movie. Dakota Johnson is fucking unhinged in this movie. The choices that she is making, whether it is from of her own volition or at the behest of the director, are inexplicable. Just absolutely inexplicable. But it works so well for me. You were talking about how awkward that baby shower scene is. That's the funniest goddamn thing I've seen in my fucking life. When they're like, when they're playing, I guess a game you play.
The game is somehow everybody's turned in little papers about something about their mother.
Like a memory, their favorite memory about their mom. And so, since she has no memories of her mom, she just put a blank piece of paper in. And so, Martha, is that her name? Mary, eventually Mary Parker.
Mary Parker, who has a little boy at the end.
Let's all be explicitly clear, kids. We've all seen the birth of Peter Parker, the Amazing Spider-Man. Also, importantly, I remember when this movie came out and people were like, oh man, Adam Scott, like hot Uncle Ben. And it's like, yeah, dog, in this universe, Marissa Tomei is Aunt May. So yeah, we should have a hot Uncle Ben too. We got the hottest fucking Aunt May possible. So I can see it. Adam Scott, Marissa Tomei, it makes sense to me. But anyway, so they're at this shower. Mary pulls out the paper and she's like, oh, this one's blank. And then Cassie's like, oh, sorry, that was mine. You don't say anything, Cassandra.
No, she needed to let them know because, again, She is a 30-year-old woman who
she has the
continues
biggest
to
hate boner for her
bear
mom.
this cross of just pure and unadulterated hatred for her mother.
Oh yeah, no, she has a hate boner for her mom. That is
she so
strong.
does. She so does.
And so she's like, yeah, no, I don't have any good memories of my mom because she died in childbirth. And then everyone is like, this woman is like 8 months pregnant, dog. And then she's like, it's not that common. I'm sure you'll be fine. And it's the most awkward thing I've ever seen in my life. I love it.
So here's the thing.
So bad.
Dakota Johnson's acting is so bad in this that you know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of Kristen Stewart's acting in the Twilight movies, which I watched 2 of those with my wife, understanding that they were bad, thinking we were going to do kind of our own MSTK 3000 riff tracks type thing where we were making jokes over the movie. And those movies were so bad that at the end of the second movie, I turned to my wife and I said, I am so tired from making jokes that I can never watch one of these again. I digress.
Here's the thing. You did
Needless
see the best one of those. The first one's the best one of those, so you're good. You didn't need to see the other 5.
But just like that was the connection I was making is I'm like, no, she has that like at times both kind of lifeless, blank look to her face. And then other times you're like, I can't tell, are you constipated or are you having a myocardial infarction?
And to be fair, and to bring it back to Twilight, what was Dakota Johnson's first big role?
It's true. In Twilight fanfic.
Anastasia Steele in 50 Shades of Grey.
It's true.
Which I've never seen.
Twilight
Never
fanfic.
will see. But it started as Twilight fanfic. Also, we got to give this woman props. She's the one who brought down Ellen DeGeneres. So, like...
I mean,
we have
give her props for that.
We have to put respect on her name. She brought down Ellen.
I'm not going to say anything about Dakota Johnson outside of this movie because this is truly the only thing I've ever seen her in. But in this movie, she is atrocious. And again, it's so difficult to tell, is this the direction she was given? Is this how she interpreted the character? Is it a combination of both? Or did she read through the script and go, look, this movie fucking sucks, but I'll get a paycheck from it, so I'm going to just phone it in. I can't tell.
Yeah.
Cannot tell. I do want to also say our main little group of the 3 teenage girls, they went to incredible lengths to try and make Sydney Sweeney look like a frumpy nerd. And
it doesn't work.
Doesn't work.
You still are like, oh, she's too pretty. She's way too pretty to pull this off.
Yes, that was a fail on that side.
She also has some incredible line reads. Let's be fucking real. Oh my god, when Cassie drives away and she just turns to the other 2 girls and she's like, I know Taekwondo. It's beautiful. It's so good.
Oh my gosh.
And then, and of course, she says, I know Taekwondo. And then Maddie's like, yeah, go fuck yourself. She knows. Maddie knows the score. And so the other 2 girls are both just like, this girl is such a dummy. And it is so funny to me.
But see, so, and what we have here to make this all seem, to make Cassandra Webb's interactions with these teenage girls seem less predatory. We've got to concoct amazing stories for all of these. So I'm sorry, I don't remember any of their names, any of the characters' names in the movies, but we've got. Oh,
I got you.
Okay, give me a name, and we'll talk about her. Which one?
All right, so here's the situation. I am primed to like this movie because these are all characters that I care a lot about. Even though we've talked about how that Spider-Woman run by John Byrne was such dog shit. She's one of those characters. But I still really like her as a character, even though the comics she was in are very bad, because I just like spider characters and I like these weird, lesser known spider characters. So Cassandra Webb, she's Madam Webb. Yep. We've got Cindy Sweeney is playing. I can't remember what her last name is.
Julia something.
I think they go with Campbell, but that is her maiden name. In the comics, her name is Julia Cornwall. That they call her Julia Cornwall. Her name is Julia Carpenter. Please, thank you. In the comics, that's her name. She is the second Spider-Woman because Jessica Drew was the first Spider-Woman not appearing in this film. We also have the third, she's played by Sydney Sweeney. We have the third Spider-Woman, Mattie Franklin, and she is played by Celeste O'Connor. And then we have Araña, a.k.a. Anya Corazon, a.k.a. Spider-Girl later on, don't worry about it, played by Isabel Merced. And so those are our three characters. We've got Julia, Spider-Girl, Spider-Woman number 2, Maddie, Spider-Woman number 3, and Anya, Spider-Girl.
Okay, so we've got Julia, who the reason it's okay for her to just abandon everything is because her dad is remarried. Her mom, was it a psychiatric thing that her mom had, or she's in like a psych hospital,
something like that. She's in a psych hospital back in California, so nobody
cares. And Julia's dad and stepmom, they don't want anything to do with her. Anya, her father was deported, and so she basically can't go to the cops or anything because then she maybe get deported too. So
she's an unaccompanied minor, essentially.
She is. So, and then we've got Maddie, whose parents are apparently fairly well off, but they're in was it Beijing or something like that? And
yeah, they're off in Asia somewhere.
And they don't care about her. So that's, they all have these abandoned. And then of course we know Cassie. We know Cassie was abandoned by her mom, but it wasn't really. So Cassie gets her like, oh no, mom did this for me. Oh my goodness. Oh, I'm going to be reconciled to her even though she's 30 years dead. It's amazing. But then she can step in as the mother figure for these 3 other girls because she understands. She understands what it's like to not have a mom.
It's true.
Yeah. What else? Can I tell you one thing that bothered me really bad, though, before we move on to something else that's good?
Please, tell me the things you hate about this movie.
This movie is ADR'd to hell and back.
Oh, my God. Especially
it is
the worst
Ezekiel
offender.
Sims.
Yes, the worst offender is almost any scene he's in, but especially the scene where he's talking to his, technobabble girlfriend.
Oh, yeah.
Not girlfriend.
Oh, yeah.
That scene was so clearly built in the edit and the ADR booth because the scene makes no sense, and B, every single shot where a character is talking, you're seeing that character's back because this was built in the edit where they were like, we gotta have a way to explain this better. We gotta get back to the drawing board, get him back in the recording booth.
But even times when his mouth is moving and you're seeing it, I'm like, even before that scene, I turned to Gareth and I'm like, in the forest, I'm going, they're ADRing this dude. Every scene he's in feels like it's ADR'd. That was insane. And it's not just him. He's the worst offender. But there's other times where I'm like, what is going on? What is going on here? That drove me crazy.
I have to know how many rough edits of this movie there were that they got back and they were like, no, go fix this. Go fix this. Go fix this. Because it sure feels like this movie, it was entirely constructed in the edit.
Oh, yeah.
And that It was not at all what was planned.
Yeah. Okay, you asked me what other things. I've already talked about. I think the acting is terrible all around. The only person, honestly, who I didn't have a visceral reaction to, where I'm like, oh my gosh, I hate you, because the acting felt so wooden and so bad, honestly, was Adam Scott. I thought,
he's a delight.
He's the great. Best character. He's the best character who I'm like, okay, you actually feel like you came and you're like, sure, yeah, I'll give it a shot. There is one scene though.
He was game for it.
There is one scene with him that I do not understand, and that is the scene before the shower where he tells Cassie that he met someone. And it is a weird, awkward scene. And I'm sure we're supposed to think, okay, this means he's met May. But it's this bizarre scene where she's like, oh, and he's like, oh, but he won't tell her anything else. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, can't go there. And it is such a bizarre scene. I do not understand what it was for.
Oh, no, there was clearly supposed to be a romantic subplot between the two and then be a doomed lover situation so that he can hook up with Aunt May. That's clearly what was happening there.
Oh, gosh. But then, and that was not communicated at all. If they ever intended there to be any chemistry, any sexual chemistry or anything between Cassie and Ben Scott, either either it just didn't happen or they decided to cut anything that would have led you that way, because I truly never, ever thought to myself, oh, could there be something between these two? Because no.
It's not clear, but that's my supposition, is that like there was an entire subplot about like her like wanting to get closer to him, and maybe they do get closer, but then like things fall apart, and then he's like, I mean, this is, we know what happens with this man. We know who he ends up with. Marissa Tomei.
I'm going to say this now. This is just me. I get it. I understand. Every single episode of CPR in this movie is awful. It is so poorly done. It would never save a life. But at the same time, it's like everybody who goes down on the ground apparently needs CPR, because that's just what you do. Folks, that's not always the answer. In fact, as a paramedic, sure is in Madam Web, though, she would often know that most of the time having an AED on hand is going to do way more than your CPR is going to do. But at one point, she's doing one-handed CPR. Folks, here's the deal. If your CPR is going to actually circulate blood, you are doing CPR with enough force that you are cracking ribs. If you don't crack ribs, you are not doing it hard enough. You cannot one-handed, casually do CPR and circulate someone's blood. But every episode of CPR, and even when she's teaching the girls to do the CPR, which again, it's got to come back because everything has to come back. Everything has to come back. She teaches them CPR for some stupid ass reason, which I can't even remember why. And then, of course, they got to do CPR on her when they get her out of the water at the end, and they got to take turns and they got to work as a team, because CPR is tiring. It is exhausting. If you're doing CPR right, it is exhausting. They were not doing it right. They would not have been exhausted, but still, that's okay. So yeah, the physician in me, really, all of the medical stuff, I was like, fuck this. You guys suck. And then the action scenes. Now, again, it's weird because they're all visions. But I'm sorry, that doesn't give you an excuse to, number one, make the costumes look like trash. And number two,
they're so bad.
They're so bad. Like, and when I say bad, I don't mean like the costumes are poorly designed. I mean, it doesn't look like these people are wearing costumes. It looks like the costumes were digitally painted on them afterwards. Like what I thought to myself is, I'm like, when I was a kid, I remember, kids would have like the little dress up dolls, and you had a paper cutout and you had a paper piece of paper that you put over them, and then you fold little tabs down so it hung on the thing. That's like what it looked like. It looked like they were just compositing these costumes that, again, don't look great on top of these. And then it just looks awful. The action scenes are terrible. Again, I don't think they would have looked good in 2003, let alone 2024.
They're not good. They're not good.
Yeah. Oh boy.
With one exception, when she does, you mentioned it, but when she drives the fucking ambulance through the wall, I cheered, because that is the stupidest thing in the world. Like, she wasn't even going to hit him if he didn't jump in the air either. Like, it's so goofy. It's so goofy. How's it driving?
Saw the future. She saw the future.
How's it driving after she went through a cement wall and then fell 3 stories?
I was going to say 3 stories up. Yeah.
It's wild.
It is wild. I did love the fact that when she goes to Peru, she is wandering around accurately the Amazon jungle of Peru, to the point that she's finding the river with a picture that her mother has. She finds
the exact tree that apparently has not grown in 30 years.
Correct. And she got there using a map of the entire country of Peru, because it says it on there. You can see through the paper. It says Peru. And it is the size of 2 8.5 11 sheets of paper. And she is able to pinpoint the location in the Amazon using a map of the entire country of Peru that is 11 by 16.
It's so good.
It's so lazy. It's so lazy.
It's incredible. this movie is definitionally lazy. Like, this is ontologically lazy filmmaking. And maybe, I don't know, I can't explain it. We're talking about it and I'm like, man, this movie really is dog shit. And then part of me is like, man, I should go throw in the Blu-ray and watch those outtakes, huh? I never got to those because they weren't on the UHD. They're only on the Blu-ray.
So here's the thing.
I didn't feel like changing discs.
Here's the thing. I will admit, and I am so glad that I pirated this movie. I did not pay anything for this except whatever bandwidth I currently pay for, because I learned from Black Adam. I learned a couple other good things I want to just touch on, and then I'm going to wrap it up because I need to do some deep breathing exercises or something before I try and go to bed tonight. No, I'm kidding. But so we get to Peru and she meets the dude from the Las Arañas. She meets the main dude who like delivered her when she was being born in the pool of water. Did they just run out of the makeup budget or whatever? I mean, like, look, Las Arañas in the beginning, they look terrible, but all of a sudden, 30 years later, he's just like, dude, he's just like looking normal. His skin doesn't look weird. He doesn't have the spider webby looking. He's just chilling in like a 2003 appropriate white shirt with some little scarf around his neck, looking like a jaunty little dude in the Amazon forest. So that was weird. Yeah. And then again, because everything has to be a reference back to something. Everything in this movie. And I think that this is honestly, if I really get down to it, what makes me the most angry about this movie is the absolute contempt that this movie has for you, the viewer. I think we kind of talked about this, and I was listening to a different podcast where they're watching some of the X-Men movies getting ready for Deadpool and Wolverine. And they recently were talking about Logan. And they talked about something that I think you and I talked about, which is Logan is a movie that has a lot of respect for you as the viewer. And there are a lot of things that it's like, we're going to let you figure it out. We're not going to grab you by the testicles and drag you with us the entire way. We're going to let you figure this out. And this movie is like, no, I want your genitalia in my hands, and I'm dragging you for 2 hours to make sure you catch every single reference. She gets out of the pool. She reunites her soul with her body. She has her aha moment. And the Las Arañas dude says to her something to the effect of something about like, when you embrace your responsibility, you gain great power. It is an intentional inversion of the classic line from Uncle Ben in the original Spider-Man. And I hate it. And I hate the fact that somebody put that in there. And I hate the fact that some dumb fuck probably thinks that they were smart because they put it in there that way. Because the idea is that Cassie, as she embraces her responsibility, her powers will grow. And I'm like, that was where I was just like, you know what? Done. Out. Fuck y'all. Fuck y'all. This movie sucks.
Yeah, that's, again, everything you've said about this movie is true. Dear listeners, everything Peter has said about this movie is true. And yet I still am glad that I own a Blu-ray and 4K duo pack of this fucking movie.
I am this is so going to be one of those movies that you love this movie. I really am.
This is going to be like, it's this, I can already see it. Like, there has been a thing going around Twitter the last few days of people talking about what is your inexplicable comfort movie? The movie that you watch as a comfort film and everybody else is like, what the fuck is wrong with you? I think this might be one of those for me. Now that I've seen it again and I'm like, I could just put that on a second screen and just have it on and be living in the world of Madame Web, get connected to her web.
That is amazing.
I can't explain it, dear listeners. It's not a good movie, and yet it's a great fucking movie. And I can't. That's all I have to say about it. If go in knowing that you're not gonna like it, and yet maybe you'll like it. Maybe you'll be weird and you'll like it. I think it's a delight.
And I really do. I do not say this with any pretense of falseness. I am so glad that you love this movie. And I am so glad that you enjoyed watching it again. And I am so glad that I will never, ever watch and probably think about this movie again.
Nice.
Anyway, that was, as I mentioned, knowing I was watching this and that you and I were going to get to talk about this, I was excited, and I have absolutely zero regrets. But this was an interesting experience, and I think that if you go into it with some idea of what you're getting yourself into, there is a chance you could somehow enjoy this movie. That's what I'll say. There is a chance.
Here's the thing. This is all I'll say. Before you watch it, go watch Daredevil, Catwoman, and Blade Trinity, and then you'll be like, God damn, you know what's
You'll
good?
be prepped for this. You'll be like, hey, Madam Web. Madam Web's pretty good.
You know what was better than the Ben Affleck Daredevil? Madam Web.
I mean, I think I would honestly say, as I mentioned before, in recent history, Black Adam is the superhero movie that has made me the most angry and that I hated the most. I personally think this is in many ways a worse movie than Black Adam, but I think that it's a much more enjoyable viewing experience than Black Adam. So I will give it that.
I have not seen Black Adam. I'll never see Black Adam. But that's not true. I might eventually see Black Adam, but I don't think I'm going to feel the way that I feel about Madam Web about Black Adam.
No, you shouldn't. You won't. You shouldn't. Because here's the thing. And this is, I'm going to say this now because I thought about it. As I was watching this, I thought to myself, I think I need to make Eden watch Black Adam. And then I got to the end of it and I thought, I cannot rewatch Black Adam. Here's the thing. The Rock is so high on his own supply.
Oh, yeah.
That it is that aspect of it that makes Black Adam so offensively bad to me. Whereas I don't think anybody was out here. Certainly Dakota Johnson was not out doing countless internet posts and interviews and stuff telling people that the power hierarchy of the Spider-Man connected universe was about to change.
No.
So, I'll give her props for not taking it that far. And that is why Black Adam is a worse viewing experience because not only is it a terrible movie, but the fact that The Rock tried to convince people that it wasn't. And even after it came out, he was trying to gaslight us all who had seen it into thinking that there was something redeeming about this, means that it is the worst experience. So yes, but if you watch Daredevil and Catwoman and things like that, and then watch this, you will not be let down any more than you already were. I'll say that. How's that sound?
There you go. That sounds perfect.
All right, folks. Well, we'll be back in another couple of weeks, but until then, if you want to leave us a review, we would love that. 5-star rating would be amazing as well. And if you've got any feedback, if you want to tell me why I'm so wrong and why this movie is so incredible, please reach out to us at feedback@themiddleofculture.com. And until next time, we'll see you all later.
Talk to you later, folks.